Okay. So this is one of our Gabby gatherings held over Zoom, and our programming is funded in part by the Maine Humanities Council and the National Endowment of the Humanities CARES Act grant. And we're recording this Zoom session for later so we can put it up on YouTube as a reference. And today's talk is presented by Chris Woodbury about generators. And Chris, take it away.
Okay, you sure about that?
Yep.
Okay, I could share my screen. Wait a minute, I'm already drawing. Okay. Well, good afternoon. It's nice to have such a cozy audience. We've got lots to talk about. Here's my notes. Don't try and interpret this. I'm going to do it bit by bit. Try to cover all the important things. We're talking about backup generators, which is a modern innovation. People used to just live with the dark and everything shut down. They got along somehow, but we have generators to restore power to at least some of our house. So here's the first step. You've decided that you need a backup power generator. Well, the first thing you have to do is decide whether you want to energize the whole house or just part of the house, essential circuits only. Now, let's look at this whole house. This is the way lots of people have gone. And the first thing you have to do is decide whether you really do want to energize the whole house. Do you have a small house or a large house? And if you have a small house, all you have to do is consult with an electrician, and he can probably arrange for you to have a whole house generator. And that looks sort of like this gizmo here. This one's made by Generac. And sitting beside it is the transfer switch. And we'll be talking about the transfer switch a bit later. So the two things you have to consult as a contractor if you're going to energize the whole house. And this is what we see in the neighborhoods. We see a freestanding generator sitting off to the side. And maybe you see a propane tank next to it, or maybe you see evidence that there's a propane tank buried under the ground near it. And that's the deluxe situation. Costs a lot of money. The generators are going to be a 12 kW unit or smaller. And the propane tank is going to be a 500 gallon tank. And you may be able to see it and you may not. And one of the things about these whole house generators is that they automatically start as soon as the power goes off. And that's a luxury. There's no time, you don't lose any time on your clocks. You don't hardly see the lights flicker. And that's a wonderful arrangement. The odd thing about this type of installation is that it goes on whether you're there or not. And many houses in this area are summer cottages, which people have installed whole house generators in, and then they go off to Florida or whatever, and this thing goes on through the winter. And it's a totally automatic thing. It sometimes starts up by itself, and you can program what day of the month it starts up to just warm up and run for a while, even though the power hasn't gone off. And this is an exercise which we will talk about with the portable generators, but it's a way of keeping things cleaned out and checking to make sure everything is okay and it's going to work in an emergency. So that's the story about a whole house generator. You need to have quite a bit of money to do one of these installations, depending on how big your house is. But the way we want to spend most of our time talking is in the portable area. And we should touch a few points of safety. When you have a contractor install the equipment, he takes care of all the compliance with all the regulations, the National Fire Protection Code number 110 and the National Electrical Codes, whatever local codes govern as how these things are to be installed. And that's a point of safety. When many people have been buying a small generator, and then when the power goes off, they plug it in somewhere with an extension cord and switch off the electrical panel main breaker. And this is totally illegal. This is not the way to go, because there is a possibility that you can feed power back onto the power line and injure one of the line workers that are doing the repairs. That's one of the fears that they have, and that's why they're so adamant that people get a permit, get it professionally installed by an electrician, and then have an inspection so that they know that everything is right before they do any testing. Another thing is, you must run the generator periodically. Portable generators don't like to be left alone for weeks on end. What I do is I have a little tag on my generator where I write the date when I start it up and run it for a couple of hours and then turn it off. That's where I can look at this tag and see how long has it been since I run this thing. And it's a good idea to do it about once a month or maybe 2 months, depends on how elaborate the generator is.
Chris, can you show us some pictures of the smaller portable ones?
Okay. Let's see.
Maybe it's under inverter generator.
Yeah, these.
Oh, there they are. Okay.
This is the size that we're talking about. These first three on the left here are small portable generators, and I think that's probably similar to what Catherine has. This little one in the middle it's for a camper, a camping trailer, or a situation like that. Now, these are all outgrowths of what many construction people have to provide power on a vacant lot that they're building a house on. They need to run their saws and their compressors, and they can bring in one of these. And that's what most of these are based on, that style. It said, here's a few prices. This is a modern, let's see, 7,500 watt. That's a pretty big machine. And this one's a 3,500 watt. That's more typical. And these are regular prices. This portable here for the camper, that's only $399. That's relatively cheap as they go. More about safety. Never put your portable generator close to the house. Certainly not in the garage, even if the door is open. These things spew out a great deal of carbon monoxide, and you don't want it to accumulate any place near your living space. So what you do is put it about 20 feet from the house. If you can find a spot that doesn't interfere with neighbors, I mean, it isn't close to their house. So It's pretty hard to do sometimes, to find a spot that's appropriate, that isn't too close to your house, isn't close to a window or door, and it would be possible for the wind to blow the exhaust away. Another thing is, when you start your generator, don't plug in right away, and don't start it up with the cord plugged into it. Put the load on the generator after it has been allowed to run for 10 minutes or 5 minutes to get really settled in. Okay, so then we need to go down this road here and ask a bunch of questions. You have electric heat in your house? If that's a yes, you need to consult with an electrician to see, is this portable generator that you're thinking about buying, is it big enough to run this electric heat? The chances are no. It depends on what type of heating system it is, but this is more appropriate for a whole house generator, which is going to be big enough to handle electric heat. The other possibility is if you bought a house and it had electric heat, you never use it, and you want to go down this road of getting a portable power generator, you get rid of it and put in gas heat or oil heat. And so we're creeping down the road here to a more feasible situation to use a small portable generator. So if your gas heat or your oil heat is what your house is equipped with, then you're in good shape. It's time to go to the next step. Hot water. How does the house heat its hot water? Most people who have oil heat have a hot water portion attached to the gas heat. I'm sorry, oil furnace, and Peter's got one of these. His furnace heats the hot water, so you're in good shape to proceed on with the choice of a portable backup generator. Now, there's a couple of other things that we need to look out for. What sort of cook stove do you have? Is this a electric cook stove? And Peter says, yes, I have an electric stove and an electric oven. Well, that's going to be too much for a small portable generator. So maybe you should go to a whole house system, or these are not as big a load as a heating system, but they are too big for a small generator. So one of the things you can do is change your hot water heater to gas. And your people have done this. I know a lady who purposely changed her cook stove to a gas stove so she could run a emergency generator. The washing machine is another question you need to look at. Is the washing machine have a dryer with it? I mean, people have that. They have a washer and a dryer. And a dryer is too heavy a load for a portable generator. So what you need to do is hang a rope out in the backyard to dry your laundry outside or in the basement. In a emergency situation, you shouldn't have to do that too much, but depends on how long the power stays off.
Chris,
Yes?
I have a question about the washing machine.
Yes.
I live where I need to have a well pump to have water. So if I were going to use my washing machine, I'd be using both the well pump and the washer. How do I know if I can power all that?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a little bit unique, but a lot of people do have wells. You need to test once you get your generator installed, and it's the one that you have, or better yet, an electrician, or I'd be glad to come over there and measure how much power do you consume while you're running your washing machine and your well pump. That could be a close fit.
Uh-huh.
Yours is 3,500 watts, isn't that right?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, that's probably going to be big enough to run your washer and your well pump. It would help if you had a tank, a big tank with your water, that your well pump fills the tank and then stays off for quite a while. So your washer is the only thing consuming the water, and you would have long periods while the washer was running and not the well pump.
Uh-huh.
The thing is, you don't want them to burn too often together, because
Uh-huh.
combined, they probably consume about half the power that your generator is producing.
Yeah, as long as I can have my well pump, I'll be happy, but it
Yeah.
would be nice to be able to run the washer now and then.
Yes. Well, that's something that needs to be tested, so you know that you're not going to overload your portable generator.
Okay.
You can test it yourself. You can make sure that there's no heavy loads in the house at the time you test it, and run the washer and see how much power it consumes. I'm not sure whether your generator has a gauge on it that tells how heavily it's loaded, but that would be something to look at while you're doing this test.
Okay, well, we'll talk outside of this Zoom.
Okay. All right,
event.
that's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so then we're getting close to a final decision here. A portable generator is somewhat of a load on your time. You've got to, it depends on what the fuel is. You'd use gasoline, or do you have propane, or do you have oil? They make portable generators that run on any of those fuels. Some of them they call dual fuel. We'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, by the way, here's another point that I didn't cover. Dishwashers. Dishwashers are sort of like a washing machine. They might put a heavy load on your portable generator. So this would be a good time to learn how to wash dishes by hand. And I'm assuming that you have a gas-fired hot water heater, so you can get lots of hot water involved in the dishwashing process and satisfy the need without having to run your dishwasher. Okay, so then the next step is, how strong are you? Are you able to pull a rope that starts the generator? No? Okay, we'll get an electric start generator, which puts a little bit more complexity to it. If you have, either one of these possibilities, either pull start or electric start, gives you lots of choices. Let's go back to anyway, I lost my, well, let's look at this one. These are inverter generators, but they don't look any different than the other type. We'll talk about inverter generators in just a moment. These things are pretty heavy, and when you have to push them out of the garage and down to your place where you have chosen to run the thing, it might be a little difficult to do, especially in the snow. You're going to have to dig a path to arrive at your operating point. And so that's a possibility. to limit the size of it so that are you sure you can handle it. And you might need to make a sled to drag it on if it's going to be snowy. And most of the power outages, I would say around here, operate or occur when it's snow. Too much snow on the trees breaks the trees, and the trees break the power lines. And that's where we get into this situation. So that's that situation, that choice out of the way. No, the size of the generator governs how hard it is to start, by pull or by battery. So your battery must be in good shape. That's another reason for running the thing every month or so, to find out that your battery is run down. And that's a good thing to know before you have to do this in an emergency. So here we are in the area of fuel choices. Gasoline presents a lot of unique problems. It is the most common fuel used in emergency power generators, but it has some hazards or disadvantages. One of the things that gasoline doesn't like to be kept for very long. It does go bad. It does go sour, and you can put in a thing called store and start, which is an additive that preserves the fuel, but even it doesn't last forever. So don't depend on a fuel supply that's likely to get very old. Here's a trick that people suggest that you do, is when you run your gasoline fire generator once a month, you use up the fuel that's been sitting there, and when whatever is left over, you put in your car, and then you go over to the gas station and fill it up again. Every time it gets too old, you can do that, whether you run the generator with it or not, and put it in your car, because the car will mix it with the other fuel, and it won't mind it if it's old.
How old is too old?
Well, she says, how old is too old? Well, 6 months is way too old. Not for an automobile, but for a portable generator. The thing is, the fuel that's been waiting in the carburetor is what's gotten old, and it's hard to get it out of there. You have to run the generator in order to get it out of there. So it's a good idea to run this thing once a month. Never have to deal with old fuel. Now, the propane choice is the most ideal because it's a very easy fuel to handle as opposed to gasoline. Here's a safety rule. Don't refill your gasoline powered generator when it's hot. You're very likely to spill a little bit, and that's all it takes to cause a flash explosion. And you don't want to be around for that. Filling the gasoline powered generator with gasoline is a tricky business in any case, even when it's cold, because you can't really see how much fuel you need to keep pouring in there. And all of a sudden, there it is at the top, and it's run over the side. That's a bad situation. So you got to practice, or you got to have a stick or something that you can stick in the fuel tank and find out how full is it. And then you put in a little more, and you put the stick in again and see how full is it. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to handle that situation, but never refuel a gasoline powered generator when it's hot. Propane then offers an advantage because it doesn't have this problem. The only difference is propane generators seem to use more fuel than gasoline generators because you have to I mean, you find out that it's used up the fuel. It's if you're using a 10-pound fuel tank to run the propane power generator, it's amazing how quickly it uses it up. So you have to have 5 or 6 tanks of propane standing by, unless you're connecting this portable generator to a big propane tank, and that adds a little complication to it. But it is a better way to go, because then you probably won't use up the propane that's in the 500-gallon tank in the 3 or 4 days that a power failure takes to get corrected.
Chris, those 10-pound tanks, those are the same tanks that are used for the propane grills that are so popular.
That's a typical size. It's easy to carry. It's heavy, but it's portable.
Yeah, and they run what, $15 to $20?
I'm not sure. There's this what is it, Rhino system. Most people go to the convenience store and they get a Rhino. They just give them an empty tank and they give you a full tank. I'm not sure what it costs.
Yeah, so it's a little cheaper that way. Well, that just, again, you have to have your fuel before the storm, because everybody's going to think, okay, the power outage is here. At least I can fire up the gas grill, and they all go to the convenience store and buy out the propane. So you have to think ahead on that. And when you're using one of these portable generators and you're roughing it. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, it's the same problem as having an adequate supply of gasoline for your gasoline powered portable generator. Whatever fuel you're using, you've got to have a standby amount supply, because as David says, as soon as the power goes off, everybody runs to the gas station to get fuel because they forgot to fill their portable gasoline fueled generator, and so it's a bit of a scramble. Now the other thing is, when the power goes off in a widespread area, the gas stations aren't going to be able to pump gas either. So you may have to go 25, 30 miles to get some gas. Another reason why you should have a standby supply of gas, maybe 20 gallons, maybe 30 gallons, 5-gallon gasoline tank, a gasoline can, well, they're made of plastic, but they still call them cans, is the typical size that is practical to use. So there you got 10 of those. Wow, that's a lot of fuel, but you don't have to have that many standing by. Just a couple of them would be fine, and that'll allow you to run your generator for a good long period, maybe 7-8 hours, and then you've used up your 10 gallons of gasoline. Not so with the propane, because you can hook up to the propane tank if your house is fueled by propane furnace. Okay, so here's a point that I would like to beat on. How much computer work do you do while the power's off? Well, supposing you're working from home, your job lets you stay home, but you have to keep your computer going. Well, the standard gasoline or propane fired a standard generator is a bad news story, because they make a lot of noise, electrical noise, and that annoys the computer systems, the Wi-Fi, or there's a good point. When the power is off, does the Wi-Fi remain energized? I mean, is the internet connection still viable? A lot of times it's not. But in a situation where the power is off for 2 or 3 days and you need to keep working your computer and the internet is still available, it's going to be a hard job to keep it working with a standard portable generator. They have a new device called an inverter generator. And inverter generators look just like regular generators. These are inverter generators. These are about $500 more than their standard generators because they're much more sophisticated. This is an invention of the Chinese. They just started releasing them a couple of years ago, and a lot of companies are representing them and building or selling the inverter generators that the Chinese are making with their names, with their name on them. This is Kohler. Now, what is it an inverter generator does that the other ones don't? Well, they produce a cleaner electrical supply. Let me show you what I mean here. Here's a picture of a sine wave, and that's what your power coming into your house is, a 60 cycle per second power supply. That's the way the lines are energized. And this is what the 60 cycle electricity looks like with respect to time. Here's a cycle. It's 60 of these in a second. So you don't get to see this unless you have special equipment. A standard power generator, portable generator, produces noisy electricity because they have to run at 3,600 RPM, and that's the only thing they know how to do. They grind ahead with maximum RPM, or controlled at 3,600 RPM, and they're not too clean. The sine wave has noise on it, and that's what this picture shows. The inverter generator, however, is designed not to do that. It generates DC power, and then it's converted by electronics to 60 cycles per second. And in the process, it's nice and clean. So that's advantage number one to the inverter generator. Advantage number two is that it uses less fuel because it can regulate the speed of the engine according to how much load there is on the generator. And so it doesn't use as much fuel. If you only got the ice chest or the refrigerator going and everything else is shut down, then the generator slows down, but it still produces 60 hertz power. Now, they do have inverter generators that are dual fuel, and that's we haven't touched on that yet. But another advantage of the inverter is that it's quieter. It doesn't have to make all this noise. A standard generator is a noisy thing because it's busting ahead at 3,600 RPM, and no matter how much power is being taken from it. And that's a tremendous advantage.
How much do they cost?
People use these, just a minute, people use these in their campers and they let them run all night so they can sleep because they can barely hear this thing. Okay. How much do they cost? Well, let's look at that picture again. As I mentioned, they are more expensive. These are the ones that are currently on the market, all the way from $700 to $1,000 or $1,200 dollars. And here's $3,500 one in the middle here, just like the size that Catherine has. I don't think that's what you bought, was it, Catherine?
No, I bought a used standard generator.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's, sometimes look at your computer while it's running. I mean, when you do your tests, you could test and see how happy is the computer with this thing supplying the power. And that's something you need to be aware of. Wi-Fi equipment, computer controlled television controls, there's all kinds of sensitive electronics in the modern home that don't like to be rattled and shouted at, banged around. This is what the standard generator does.
So Chris, would that damage your laptop or your TV? So if the power went out and you made sure you weren't washing the dishes and running the microwave and all that stuff at the same time, but we're sitting there in the dark and you could watch a movie on your laptop, will that generator damage it? Will a generator that's not an inverter damage it or not?
I don't think it would damage it, but it would certainly make it hard to control. The image would go off and you'd have to go chase it down again. You know, the interference is the kind of thing that it causes.
Okay, so the sound might buzz at 60 hertz. It'd be a
Yeah.
zzz in the background when you're trying to listen. Okay.
It's not, I've never been able to hear anybody who's had this problem. So I can't really speak from experience, but I have read a number of articles about this, and like the one that I showed you the picture from, oops, I'm sorry. This, the guy that wrote this article spoke very detrimental about a standard generator, because this guy's a ham radio operator, and he couldn't keep his equipment on frequency and operating correctly with a standard generator. And so he advocated the inverter because they became available just in the last couple of years. Now we're talking about dual fuel. David is very interested in that. He wants to be able to back up a gasoline generator with propane. Isn't that what it was?
Yes,
David?
Chris. Yes. My thought is that usually when the power goes out, it's dark and it's snowing and there's a storm, and I don't want to be handling gasoline in the dark. So if I could hook up the propane tank to get me started, just to maybe prepare supper and run the refrigerator. And then in the daytime, if I have to turn the generator on for an hour here or there to keep the food cold, I'm heating the house with a wood stove, but the wood stove is heating up the refrigerator. So
Yeah, making it run, yeah.
yeah. So a portable generator is kind of an emergency thing. I'm kind of camping out, and I for the amount of money that it is, if I spent $5,000 on a permanent setup, a generator with a big propane tank in the yard, it would take me 30 years to pay the same amount to the electric company for the convenience of having a generator that I might need 5 hours a year, So, that's why I probably lean towards a portable with the dual fuel being safer, propane especially, but yeah, that was my reasoning.
That's good. That's good. It's a good argument. Dual fuel generators tend to run cleaner because the different fuels operate differently, leave different traces in the mechanism. Okay, we finally arrived at the last leg of this diagram. probably should do this earlier on. I mean, before you get too far into the decision of buying one of these things, and that is to do an electrical load analysis, find out how much power your home consumes, and that's a little bit difficult to do. You go down through your breaker panel and look at how many 15 amp breakers you have and how many 20 amp breakers you have, or how many 30 amp breakers you have. The 30 amps would be for the cook stove, for the furnace, for the
Refrigerator?
the hot water heater. Trying to think of all the ones are 30 amps. Anyway, those, now if you add them up and find out how many amps are you drawing from the main breaker, if you look at the top of your panel, you'll see the main breaker is probably a 200 amp breaker. And that's a new thing in the last 25 years. It didn't used to have them be that big because people didn't have that much electrical load in their house. So nowadays we do. We have a lot of electrical appliances. You don't have to run them all when the power goes off. So you need to create sort of a list of things that you can afford to live without, and how many things must you have. Like for us, it was the electric refrigerator, or the standard refrigerator. If we had a power outage of 3 days, we'd lose all the stuff that's in there in the freezer. And that's a terrible thing to have happen. So that's the main reason for having an electrical backup, a portable generator. And of course, if you have a whole house generator, don't have to worry about anything. Everything's just going to keep on going. So select the circuits that you absolutely must have. And then here's a decision. It's a tough one. I know Catherine has a 10 circuit transfer switch, which means that she can take 10 breakers out of her main electrical panel and put them into the transfer switch. And those will be the items that will be energized by the portable generator. They can be obtained. Let's see, I have a picture of them just for the, this is the 6 circuit transfer switch with a connector, outside connector. Now the transfer switch is an essential item in this whole game, whether you have a whole house generator or a small portable. This takes away the circuits that you're going to energize with the generator and isolates them from the power system of the main panel in your house. So there is no way that you can send electricity back up the power line. And that's why the National Electrical Code came down hard on people who don't have a transfer switch. This one comes with the outside connector. The transfer switch is mounted next to your main panel, and the electrician transfers or takes the wires that used to be on the selected circuits in your main panel, and he connects them to the transfer switch. And so then those breakers that were disconnected in that process are no longer in use. O is the power for those items that you selected are supplied by these new breakers, either when the power is coming down the power line or when it's coming from your portable generator. And on this panel is a switch which says no more power for the power line. Power is coming from the generator and they are separate. They are disconnected from each other. From this panel, you run a wire. It's a permanent installation. It's not this cable here. And it goes through the wall to the outside of the house, and they mount this socket on the wall outside the house. And that's the total connection. This one is supplied with a short, looks like a pretty short cable with the proper connectors to go from the generator to the outside connector, which then supplies the transfer switch. There's all kinds of different, but they all have the same combination, an outside connector and the transfer switch. So that's where the final choice is made. You buy the right size transfer switch to supply the circuits that you want energized during a power outage. And that completes the installation except for your choosing. Now, assuming that you hadn't chosen the generator until you got all the way down here, that then gives you a chance to say, okay, I've got to have a 2,500 watt, or I can get away with a 2,500 watt generator, or do I need a bigger one? So then you go out and you buy that, you bring it in and you set it up, and the electrician has installed all of these things. Now this is a question I have to put to the code enforcement officer here in Algonquin and say, could a homeowner put in his own transfer switch and install a portable generator? And he would say, well, only on certain conditions, that you get a permit before you even start this process. And this is true in any case. Any kind of modification to your electrical circuits in your house, you should get a permit so that then they can come around and inspect to see that you did it right. And that's especially true in this particular type of installation. A transfer switch is not a big deal. It's not a complicated thing. There are many YouTube presentations on the web that show how you should do this. And it makes it very comfortable to do it yourself. But if you're not a do-it-yourselfer, don't mess with it. Get an electrician. It's not a big deal. I think maybe Catherine could tell us how big a deal it is to get a transfer switch installed.
Chris,
Make a comment about that?
Chris,
Yeah.
we have another Zoom session starting at 3:30, and so that gives us 10 more minutes.
Okay.
And I think Kathy should chip in. She's just bought a used generator and installed a transfer switch. But your flow chart reveals just how complicated a decision it is. And this also reveals to me the conversations I've had through the years with people saying, well, I'm going to get a generator, but I don't know what to get. Well, the reason they never end up getting one is they don't realize just what a complicated decision it is. And your flow chart reveals that there are many decision trees, many decisions to be had in that process. The result is that people don't get around to buying a generator. They just suffer through the next event, or they call the expensive generator company, which is a good option if they have the money. But anyway,
Okay. That's good.
Kathy?
I want to mention something that took me by surprise. After I bought the used generator from a friend who was moving away and started reading about it, I realized you can't run it outside without it being sheltered from the weather. And, you know, that just took me by surprise because you run a generator when the weather's crummy. So I've figured out a way to do it, but it was another thing to figure out.
Yeah, that's a good point. What did you end up building? A doghouse or a tent or something?
I've created something sort of tent-like, shall we say.
Yeah, okay.
It'll work. The main structural part of it is a card table.
Okay. So it's right down close to the generator.
Yeah, but not too, yeah.
Yeah.
It's up a little ways because the gas tank is on the top. So, yeah.
There's a lot of ways to handle that, but
Well,
it's
this was
it's a good idea.
using materials I had on hand.
Right. Well, thank you, David. I got to the bottom just at the right time then.
And I
Yeah.
do have one other question,
Go ahead.
Chris. You mentioned running the generator periodically, and I know that I'm supposed to do that. But you said run it for a couple of hours. Is that a good idea? I didn't have any idea how long to run it.
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is that you switch over your transfer switch and run your system with a load. You know, I don't know if I mentioned this, but don't run your generator for 2 hours with no load.
Okay.
Put something on it. Even if you have to plug in a 100-watt light bulb or something like that. But it's good to practice with your backup system to see how things turn out.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm. What do you think, Peter? Are you going to transfer to an emergency power system when the power goes off?
Well, if I ever install one of these generators, whatever kind it would turn out to be, I would certainly do that.
Yeah.
I don't have anything now.
Okay.
A little can of denatured alcohol will heat up some water so I can have that and have a wood fireplace and a gas fireplace. So partially taking measures without a generator.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That mentions a couple of things that I forgot to mention. You get a collection of emergency devices like LED flashlights, LED lanterns, kerosene lanterns are kind of a thing of the past, but they are a little bit dangerous, but they make light so you don't fall down the stairs or do something silly during a power outage. I think we're probably better switch off, David. I don't know.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chris, for making this presentation. And it, again, looking at your flow chart, it's a complicated decision. And of course, the easiest thing is to spend the big money. And even if you do get a portable, let's say if I spent $700 on a portable generator, I still have to buy the transfer switch. That's $250. And if I hired an electrician to put it in, that's even another few hundred. Then I'm buying the fuel and I have to have a safe place to put it. I'd have to probably build a little secure doghouse outside. So it's a lot to do. But then again, I've gone 5 days without power during one of these ice storms. It's no fun. I'm not sure whether spending $1,200 just so I can have a little electricity is worth it or not. But anyway.
Well, you do have an electric refrigerator.
I do. Yeah. And yeah. Well, thank you, Chris, for doing all this research, and I'm impressed by your engineering mind. I thank you very much. And so our next Gabby gathering will be in 2 weeks. Do I have that right? Or is it the 19th? I think it
On
may
your
be next
website.
week.
You go look on your website.
I'd have to look on the website, but it's going to be about the gold rush in Perkins Cove in 1960. So that might be worth tuning into.
2 weeks would be Thanksgiving, David.
That's correct. So it's not in 2 weeks. It's next week. All right. Let me see. Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to, Chris, can you stop sharing your screen and then I'll stop recording. And there's Peter, and go back to Chris, say something.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.
All right.
Thanks,
Call
David.
me if you have a question.
Okay. Yeah, if you have any questions, get in touch with me at the library and I can get you in touch with Chris. And now I'm going to,
Everybody press their leave button.
Now say goodnight.
one moment. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.